Hello and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten and with me is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ryan. And despite what we saw tonight against the Grizzlies on, you could say, national TV, I'm doing okay because as you're listening to this, you can't see me, but I'm currently rocking a AAPI night Wolves item of the game. It's Wolves themed design by Filipina, Minnesota native artist. She goes by Laura Halasev. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a really cool crew neck that I got thanks to Ryan, who was at the game, and shout out to his season ticket discount. He's able to help me pick one up, and so I got a new crew neck to add to my rotation here. So feeling pretty good about that. But game wise, not so great. I want to say it was expected. The Wolves, just when you think you know them, they kind of do that thing. But it's I don't know how it is over there. I feel like Ryan, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I've heard it's still really cold out there in Minneapolis and basically any non-California state. It was about 80 degrees here in Southern California today, so it was hot
Oh my gosh.
here today. So I'm like, man, like we could use a cool breeze over here. But what about you? How's it going over there in your neck of the woods?
No, it for sure. Weather-wise, it's been much better. It's been like 20 degrees, which sounds cold, but when it was -10 the week before, that's a 30-degree increase. But yeah, I mean, life's been up and down. Obviously, this stuff with ice is still happening daily, and so we'll talk about basketball obviously in this one, but that's still it's still at the top of a lot of people's minds here locally. Just
Yeah.
that's continuing to go on. Um, but yeah, the basketball tonight against Memphis was not great, and it's just kind of another game in the long list of just inconsistent play from this team, inconsistent really effort, especially on the defensive end. That's what stood out to me in this one. They just at no point during this game were able to contain Memphis defensively, like at all. I mean, I'm sure there'll be talk of like Memphis just shot the ball well and got a lucky or shot variance. I mean, I guess that's part of it, but I thought they were getting wide open looks. They were getting easy transition buckets. They were getting a lot of second chance points and off of offensive rebounds. To me, it's like, it's not that the Wolves don't have the personnel to match up with this Memphis team or anything. It just they weren't locked in like they were, say, against OKC, a game we'll talk about later. But it's just one of those games where it's none of these, so few of these performances make me worried about the playoffs, right? Like, you see how they perform against Oklahoma City. They're, especially defensively, they're immediately locked in from the moment the game starts, and they just whoop them. And in the first game again against Memphis, I thought the defense was inconsistent there, but they certainly played well enough and hard enough to run away with that game. And tonight, just from the opening first quarter, like, Memphis was getting right to the rim, Memphis was getting wide open shots. And it's like, it just comes down to effort. And I completely understand, like, every team has this. And I think there's like an excuse here and explanation here that's like, we'll talk about the trade deadline too. The players see just the same stuff we see, right? And so I think it's fair for a lot of these guys to maybe not mentally be as locked in, right, for at least this one game, but I'd be willing to write that off a little bit more if this was a performance like this wasn't such a pattern. And I talk about not being worried about the playoffs, but where it does show up to me is, I think it's the Wolves will play better than their regular season in the playoff. They'll play better in the playoffs than their regular season record dictates. I believe that, but I also believe that, and I feel I'm a broken record on this, is that the consistency level that you show in the regular season does carry over, and the habits you have in the regular season do carry over. And so I just on a team that performs this inconsistently in the regular season, I just believe is going to have a really difficult time playing consistent enough to win 3 straight playoff series. And so at some point with this core, or maybe by the end of this week, this core looks a lot different. They're going to have to play with just a greater level of consistency. And this Memphis game is a perfect example. They did not give themselves a very good chance to win against a team that they should have won by 7 or 8 points.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say, Ryan. And this is, I put this on Blue Sky, or I posted that said, it felt like the Wolves reverted back to like their lackadaisical defense, especially like just their effort. Aside from the OKC game, even during this 4 game stretch, I mean, the second Warriors game, I mean, the one where they sat everyone, I mean, it was a Steve Kerr sympathy win game almost that they gave to us. And yeah, and then after that, I mean, they played the Dallas Mavericks, who were also a zombie team. They shot 45, they let that team shoot 45%, which if you look at who's actually playing, like that was really high for a really bad team. And then you look at when they played Memphis just the other day, they let Memphis shoot 49% in that game. Again, a team that if you look at who's playing on the roster, like I don't know why they should be shooting 49% when all of our starters basically are playing. And then today they let the Grizzlies shoot 50% again. And it absolutely is a defensive effort thing. I talked about this on a previous episode about how my middle brother, who does not really watch sports or basketball much at all, has moved to SoCal, so he's watched some games. And so when we were watching a game, he was like bewildered by how good Anthony Edwards was. And then when he was over this last weekend when they played the Grizzlies on Saturday. He was like, "Oh man, like you guys are doing pretty good. Like you guys are up like 8 or something at halftime, or 9 or something at halftime against the Grizzlies." I was like, if you knew like who was actually on this Grizzlies team, it's not that good. So the whole game, he just heard me bemoaning like we were literally just trading baskets with them. And I had the recap for Canis Hoopus, and I titled it "Sleepwalking to a Victory." And Ant said in the post game media in the locker room that Finch was not happy at all with them after the game, and you could tell by the defensive effort. And it sucks to know that Ant continues to kind of sound like a broken record himself about how it's got to start with me. I know it's hard for me to get up for every game, and his whole spiel about that. Yet you still get games like this where, yeah, he's scoring the ball, like that's great. And yes, I absolutely agree. The officiating was extremely concerning throughout the first, parts of the game, and they were getting, frustrated. I'm not blaming on that, but so I get he's frustrated, but you cannot allow yourself to continually get backdoor cut all the time, or letting guys blow right past you if they're not someone that's on the Thunder. And so it is frustrating for me to hear that. And you look at the final score, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And you look at the fourth quarter. I mean, the Wolves shot 12 of 20, shot 60% in the fourth quarter, which you would think like, okay, well, that should be enough to overcome like, a mild double-digit deficit. But again, it goes back to the defense, Ryan. They let the Memphis Grizzlies shoot 65% in the fourth quarter. And I don't even want to say they let them, because the Grizzlies, to their credit, made a ton of tough shots late. I also posted that it looked like they all turned into Kevin Durant. All of a sudden, they were hitting step back, turnaround mid range jumpers like at the shot clock buzzer, and I was like, damn, like okay, but the problem was that they were already in a rhythm, because all game leading up to that, they were allowed to get open shots and get open layups, or it felt like every time GG Jackson scored, it was like a poster dunk on somebody, and so it's quite frustrating. I do agree. And you kind of expect this. And what's worrisome to me, Ryan, is about what's coming up next. The Wolves, obviously, they had a 4 game win streak, which we'll talk a little bit about the OKC game. But before that, I mean, if you remember, they were on a 5 game losing streak right before that. And then you look at the stretch before that, they had won 6 of 7. And then before that, they lost 3 of 2. So it's kind of like the cycle. And I get it. You said it too, Ryan. It's the dog days of January. And, how do you care about every single game? Like, the Wolves haven't, I think, won in Toronto in I don't know how many years, and that's where they're going to play. On Wednesday. I'm a little nervous about that game, because the Wolves seem to get into this habit of like, all right, we'll just kind of go through a flow, and then we'll bounce back and win a couple later.
Yeah, this is just kind of who this team is at this point. They don't, like you mentioned, Ant had some enlightening answers about like the inconsistent effort after the first game in Memphis, and like they exactly like the stuff that he talked about happened tonight. So it's just kind of like I'm almost tired of talking about it, because it's been the same thing over and over. And at this point, we'll dig into like the specifics of this game, but just thinking bigger picture is like the Wolves record at the end of the season is going to undersell how good they are, both talent wise and their strength in the playoffs. They're trending towards just like missing 3, 4, 5, 6 wins that they should have had, and I don't know what seed they'll be missing, but like that might cost them a seed line or two. Like the repercussions of that we'll figure out in the playoffs, and how to fix that I think will come in the off season if if the Giannis trade does not materialize in the next week, in the next few days. I just that's kind of the one thing I'm thinking about is just like why look at the teams around them and the injury status. Obviously Oklahoma City is just a regular season juggernaut, and I'm not exactly expecting them, but like they so much how you move up in the standings in this league is the biggest thing is obviously talent, but the next is like just playing hard every single night. It sounds lame, it sounds cliche, but like that's it. That's why Oklahoma City is so good.
It's like the Rudy Gobert factor for us sometimes, right? Like playing hard, right? That's what he does. That floor raiser. But other teams don't have to rely on a Rudy Gobert as a floor raiser. Like they try to play harder every game.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like Oklahoma City's an outlier there, but like Denver was missing Jokic for a month plus, and they're ahead of the Wolves. The Spurs have been Wemby's played a lot fewer games than Ant has, and they're above them. Houston is missing their starting point guard and the starting center now, and is above them. The Lakers and Suns, like Booker's been missing time. The Lakers have been without all their three top guys. Like it's just that part of it is frustrating. That like the Wolves should be a 2 seed. Like that's the Wolves have been healthy enough and have the talent. They should be the 2 seed in the West. And I guess we'll see at the end of the season what that ends up costing them.
Yeah, it's as they go forward. I mean, every team has their flaws, so I'm not thinking like the Wolves are the only ones that have their issues. I mean, I've watched more and more as we get closer towards the end of the season. I mean, we're past the halfway point. Yeah, I've been watching like some not just scoreboard watching, but just league pass watching some of these other teams. Like, I mean, Houston squeezed by like Indiana today, which is one of the worst teams in the NBA, and even OKC they've had some problematic losses recently. They haven't been like perfect. I mean, they had a huge win streak, but they've dropped some games. Every team has their vices, and ours is clearly it's cliche, and I feel like listeners like y'all are probably tired of hearing this. But the Wolves' issue is themselves. Really is what it is at the end of the day, and so it depends on what kind of glasses you want to wear, what tinted glasses you want to wear. That can either be a good thing or a bad thing. Because it's like, all right, no team can get in our way because it's really just us. Versus like, damn, you can't even get out of your own way, kind of thing. So we'll see. I mean, the trade deadline is later this week, and we don't know if any moves will be made. But you also can't rely on a move to be made to fix these issues. They're not bringing in, I don't know, will Bill Russell in his prime to come in to bring the team together. Like there's no savior coming in that way. It's gonna be deep. It's gonna have to be a lot more than just saying some cool words or reflective words in the media availability. It's gonna take a little bit more than rattling off a 4-game win streak against mostly zombie teams, things like that. So we'll have to see it when we believe it. But I do agree with you. Yeah, the floor is so high. I do like how the team performs when it's not even when the stakes are high, but when people don't seem to believe in them, kind of thing. When they're the underdog, that seems to be where they really get up. And again, that could be a two-sided blade per se.
Yeah. And I think it is fair to bring up like the looming deadline. Like if you were going to have like a letdown game, like this point in the season, this week is time for that. But I would also point out like a lot of these point issues have been happening through the season, and like Memphis, the guys on Memphis aren't feeling the same thing too. So, but I get it. Like the Wolves certainly, especially the past couple days, have been like there's numerous reports of them going after and this person being traded out, this for all that stuff. So totally understandable. Let's actually dive into the actual game, because I do a criticism of myself is like trying not to take every win or loss and blow it up as either the biggest thing or the worst thing or the best thing or whatever. So digging into this actual game, it was another example of like the Wolves are just short a man or two. In the playoffs, that will be limited because like you're just going to play your guys more, but the Wolves currently have 6 guys they can trust, and I think in the playoffs you're going to need 7.5. I think they can get to 6.5 just with the guys currently on the roster, and they can make a small enough trade to get to 7. But right now, past Naz Reid on the bench, they just don't have enough. I thought like Mike continues to struggle, especially offensively, and even defensively, where I think Finch kind of talked about Mike does cover up for a lot of defensively, but ultimately like he's just a small guard, and I've seen him numerous times just get like just bowled over toward the rim. Jalen Clark, I thought one of the biggest stretches in this game. So they cut it to 4 late in the third quarter, and Jalen Clark, while Memphis is in the bonus, fouls twice, basically away from the ball, and Memphis hits 4 straight free throws. The next 2 possessions after that, Memphis gets to the line, and they have an 8-0. Memphis has an 8-0 run without ever shooting a field goal. Like that was a killer. The Wolves went from down 4 to down 8, and then Memphis comes out of the gates in the fourth quarter and just basically takes a 20-point lead, and that's the game. So Jalen Clark just hasn't been good enough really on either side of the ball. But I mean, if offensively his shot just isn't going in, and defensively he's not providing like the all world defense what it felt like for a lot of the point of the season. And then Bones, inconsistent offense. I kind of feel like I've been on this. I think if Mike weren't playing, that would solidify Bones's role offensively a lot better, maybe get better Bones, but also on the defensive end, Bones is just not good enough there either. So yeah, Pat, and then so it really what's been a big barometer for the Wolves is when they don't get a fantastic Naz Reid game, they're just not getting enough scoring from their bench, like really even close. Bones Highland, like aside from Naz, they get 3 points from Bones Highland, and that's it. So that was like the most concerning part of the game to me, aside from the defense, was just like the lack of bench production.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be coming from, I think, looking at the bench. We've seen it and we've talked about it previously, and Wolves fans have also talked about it on social media. Is that the Wolves have been losing two-way players, the last two off seasons between Nikhil and then Kyle, Anderson, and they're losing that connectivity. And like again, we hope that Terrence Shannon would have stepped into that role. Obviously, he's still hurt. Jalen Clark showed some promise when he played last year when he went on kind of a hot streak from three to really start his career. And so we're like, oh, maybe that can translate. And just way too inconsistent. I mean, look at these guys like Bones and Nas. They're theoretically, I don't let the 4 blocks that Nas had today fool you. Like that's great, he got 4 blocks, but he is not a defender, right? That's not his role, and that's what what he's good at. I mean, how many times are you watching him not a box out for a rebound, or just letting a guy get right past him, or just not making the right rotation? And same with Bones Highland, right? I mean, Bones, for his credit, he could offer that scoring punch, but same thing. Like how many times is he just getting kind of Mike Conley there on defense, where they're just kind of backing him down? And then Jalen Clark, again, we know he's kind of one-way player, so. Again, we don't have to jump super into the trade deadline right now, but that is something that, when you look at Io DeSumo or someone like that, it would have been maybe a Keon Ellis, who obviously, already just got traded by my Kings to the Caps. Those type of two-way players is what it feels like what the Wolves really need right now off the bench, because again, like I agree with you, where they're not getting a good Naz Reid night offensively like they didn't today. He went 1 of 6 from 3, 4 of 12 from the field. I mean, he was a minus 18, I think it was, a team worst. He just was not giving it enough. And again, it's because he wasn't scoring, but yes, he had 4 blocks, but he was also getting roasted on defense, like we were just talking about. So yeah, I mean, today's game, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but it is a pattern. Like you said, this is a pattern of behavior that the Wolves have shown, is that when the bench has issues, or, when they're not playing a high seeded team, like the Nuggets on Christmas, or, the Thunder on primetime, like, they're just not getting enough for it. And like we saw, if you watched the game, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't watch the rest of the fourth quarter after the Grizzlies went up by I think it was 14 early in the fourth quarter. Like the Wolves all of a sudden, like with 7 or 8 minutes left, like they went all out. They're like, all right, like let's try really, really hard. And to their credit, it's like they threatened to get it within single digits a couple of times. I think they did get within single digits a couple of times. And taking it seems like at will into the paint, drawing contact, and maybe getting the sympathy call after he didn't really get any calls he should have gotten in the first 3 quarters. All that. Dante's all over the place, all that type of stuff. And it's like, dude, like, why is it taking for you to get to this point where you're trying to make this epic comeback at the end? And again, I know it's easier said than done for us to be sitting here on our couches at home, like, play harder, play harder every game, every minute you're out there. But again, if they have goals to be a championship team, then they have to create better regular season habits, and they're not doing that right now. And so I do think they will make it past maybe a couple rounds in the playoffs, even just as currently constructed, mental makeup and all, and flaws and all. But yeah, I do feel like they are capping their ceiling here in terms of okay, when things get tough in the later rounds, are you going to be able to revert to good habits?
Yeah, like you mentioned, Naz Reid, or like I mentioned, when they don't get a good game from Naz, they aren't able to score enough. And Naz's 4 blocks stand out, and obviously those 4 individual plays were great, but like him and everyone else, like it was just the perimeter defense, it was not good enough, not consistent enough. Ball containment is like the classic term that Finch always uses, and that's like the number one indicator on where the Wolves are playing that night. Anthony Edwards obviously scores like an efficient 39 points, but I thought his defensive performance was not good enough, and that's been a consistent thing for him this season. I think back to during that 5-game losing streak, where that Bulls game where he just completely misses a defensive assignment where the Wolves seemed to have control of the game, and the game flipped right there. Yeah, the other aspect of this game, I think the two starting bigs, Rudy Gobert was not very effective in this game. Part of that was, again, the perimeter defense, and there's only so much Rudy can do to cover up. The other one was he just didn't do a good enough job against Jaren Jackson Jr., who had a pretty good game. And then the other one would be Julius Randle, which, if we're giving people a pass for the looming deadline stuff, you'd imagine Julius would be right at the top of that. But again, the defense just not nearly good enough. He had a nice 8 assists, 3 turnovers, 19 points is fine. Hit all of the 8 of his free throws, which would be nice if everyone else could hit their free throws as well. But I think it's been a while now. Well, one, the shot selection I just don't think is very good. Has been very good. A bunch of contested long twos, 1 of 6 from 3, 5 of 14 from the floor. But I think it's kind of become, when the other team has someone that can guard Julius straight up, which most teams or almost every team don't. But when the other team does have that sort of player, Julius's value goes way down because he's not able to do the bully ball stuff that makes him so effective. And so, like, that's kind of the main worry now. Does Oklahoma City have that type of player? Is Chet that? I don't know. Does Chet have enough strength? If you're thinking like the Spurs probably do with Wemby, but Wemby's just a one-man wrecking crew. I don't know. I just thought it was one of those games where you think back to the OKC series last year where Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert were not good enough, and that was kind of the case tonight, with all the caveats of just one game, blah blah blah. They've both been playing fairly well in the recent stretch.
Yeah, I was talking to my brothers. We were watching the previous Grizzlies game, and I was trying to explain to him that the Wolves have like this issue, or it seems like have this issue with they feel like they don't get respect from the refs in terms of getting free throws or getting foul calls in comparison to their opponents. And I try to explain that feels like, oh, because Julius and Anthony Edwards, like our two best offensive players, they've said it before, is like, they get penalized because they're stronger than their opponents. And so like they don't flop, they don't throw their head back, they don't intentionally fall down and griff like that bad, while other teams do. And though that may be true, they can't fall prey to where I feel like what happened today against like Ty Jerome. Like Ty Jerome only shot 6 free throws today, but that type of like, I call them like dainty, kind of spindly, like quick little guards like him, or you think about like, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously, even like, a Brandon Pajinski type of guy where it's like, they're really good at getting under their defender's skin by flopping a lot and drawing fouls. And the Wolves, like Jaden or Ant, like they get frustrated. He's like, no, like I'm going to go out his chest, where it's like, dude, like, get your hands out of there. Like you're getting lulled into these like stupid fouls. And so again, as much as they were frustrated by their lack of calls, they were committing a lot of stupid fouls, unfortunately. And that's also been sadly a theme of the Wolves for at least this season, where they're just not playing smart defense. Like, where they're playing good defense and then bailing them out at the end because they're like, let me block this shot, or like, whatever, where it's like, no, let me steal this ball, where it's like, no, just force a tough shot and grab the defensive rebound. And so they'll get caught up like going after a ball, and even if they don't get catch themselves fouling the opponent, they'll give up an offensive rebound. And I feel like that happened so much recently for them, and tonight, I mean, was no different. I mean, they were just not sharp on that end like they were against OKC, so that's frustrating.
Yeah, I think there was a stretch, a couple possessions there where there was a couple like flabbergasting non-calls that the Wolves didn't get. I think you kind of mentioned them, where like they got hit on the arm, Ant got hit on the head, Julius got hit on the arm, Ant went up for layup and got swiped down on the
Yeah.
there's a fair like, what the heck is happening there? What, like, those need to get called as fouls. On the defensive end, I think looking at the officials for that would be extremely misguided. It's just they're not moving with their feet. They're not getting into proper position to defend. They're behind the play, and guys are drawing fouls on them. Like, this isn't like, on the defensive end, this is not like an OKC thing or like a foul baiting thing. No, they're just not. They're not in proper position. They're half step slow, and it's leading to way too many fouls. It's a clear indication of like where their defensive focus is. is at the moment, is when they're fouling like this. Like, what is it? 25 fouls in this game is just way too many. And it led to 35 free throws for the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Like, that's way too many. And I don't think, I mean, you could always pick out a call or two, but like, I did not, on the defensive end, I did not at one moment go, wow, the refs are really calling way too many fouls. No, they were not in good defensive position pretty much the entire game.
Yeah.
It's been a trend, unfortunately, and it's costing them extremely winnable games.
I think a microcosm of really a good example. I think that would really illustrate like the bigger issue of how Finch said it last year, where it's like it's a team of emotional players, for better or worse, usually worse. Is that I think Jaden scored or someone scored a jump shot. This was in the second half, and then like Jaden like runs over to the ball. And he like pretends to like grab it because Jaden, he's always up to some shenanigans at some point. So he like runs over to pretend to like grab the ball, and then he doesn't. And then Ed Malloy calls a delay game on the Wolves for like, oh, Jaden grabbed the ball or messed with the ball after. And then you can hear, I mean, from Austin Rivers on that side, but you hear the entire team yelling, like, "You didn't touch the ball! You didn't touch the ball!" And like, yeah, like that's obviously a wrong call. It didn't cost them anything. They didn't end up getting a second delay game, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. But the Wolves are so like in their feelings with the refs at that point that like on the next inbounds possession, like Jaden really presses up really hard, and it's one of those ticky tack. Like it's kind of it probably shouldn't be a foul, a loose ball foul for trying to like reach in or whatever, bump it down, blocking foul. But they end up calling a foul against them, and then they further lose their shit after that, where it's like Austin Rivers on the national broadcast trying to talk Nas Reid down, who's on the bench, like, all right, calm down, Nas, calm down, Nas. Like, all right, that's enough, Nas. Like, where it's, again, I think it's illustrative of what type of composure they have when they feel like things are not in their favor. Now, granted, again, they did do a good job later in the fourth quarter when they tried to really like, all right, ignore the whistle. Like, we're going to initiate contact. We're going to draw fouls. We're going to force them to call the fouls. And, they got to the bonus. And that's kind of how they came back late in the game. But even then, it's like the game really got away from them before that. They didn't lose the game in the fourth quarter. It was well before that.
Yep, exactly. Let's break down the Wolves, the 4-game winning streak before that, which I would call the least surprising 4-game winning streak ever for the Timberwolves wise, at least. So they lose the 5 games prior to this. I'll just kind of go one by one on them. When they lose at Houston without Ant, I thought they played fine enough in that game. Second night of a back-to-back, a quick one too, like they played at 8:30 one night and then 7 the next night. No Nas for most of it, no Rudy for the whole thing. Ant scores 55, and they lose at San Antonio. No problem, whatever. And then they lose at Utah and versus Chicago. 2 just brutal, like same,
nonsense
even worse
losses.
than what
They're like nonsense losses. Yeah.
Worse than what we were talking about tonight. And then they lose the game that got delayed from the night before after Alex Purdy was killed. And not really willing to, like we said that time, not really willing to destroy them on that one. But still, like the Utah and Chicago games, just like games that you need to win if you want to get the proper seed that you'd have liked. And then we already mentioned, like they beat the Zombie Warriors, they beat the Zombie Mavs. We'll talk about their very nice win against kind of the Zombie Thunder, but whatever. And then they beat the Zombie Grizzlies on Saturday. So 4 game, again, not surprising that they go on this win streak. Every time they are doing well or doing poorly, we talk about it. It's like whenever this team is like in their lowest of the depths or whatever, they always respond. They've done it basically the entire time Chris Finch has been here. And the opposite is kind of true, where when they're going well, kind of like tonight, they coast and they cost themselves a game. So not surprising 4-game losing streak, not a surprising loss tonight. But the one to break down is obviously the Thursday's game against Oklahoma City, and caveats apply, right? No Jillian Williams, no Alex Caruso, no AJ Mitchell. Like OKC's missing some solid guys. Who else? Isaiah Hartenstein on a minutes restriction as well, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But if we're playing the caveat game, the Wolves were on their 4th game in 5 nights, something that the NBA doesn't even schedule anymore. Obviously, the delayed game caused that to happen, but still like a tough travel situation for the Wolves. And every negative thing we said about the defense tonight the exact opposite was true against this Oklahoma City game. Like, they were on point. Defense was awesome. They just, like, it reminded me so much of game 3 of the West Finals. Obviously, like, they won that game by like 50 or whatever, but like, where they just dominated them and used physicality against a team in the Thunder who are really good at dishing that sort of thing out. And I think if to give them a small weakness, of which they don't have many, it's like they don't always take that physicality well back. And I thought, obviously, like, too much physicality leads to a foul, right? And I would probably more say physicality when you're not in position is always going to lead to a foul. And so, like, that's the difference, is being in correct position, being ahead of the driver, being in position to play physically and not draw a foul was big. And weirdly, SGA had 30 points and only missed 6 shots. Like, he only went to the free throw line 5 times, which is a big thing. I thought they did a great job on him, even if, I mean, look, he's going to be MVP. He's going to play enough games over Jokic that it seems like he's going to win and kind of deserve a second straight MVP. The Wolves played awesome against him, as well as you really can against that type of player, and they come away with this win. And it's just another example of, I'm not worried about their ability. Now, I'm very curious to see them play Denver again, because they're 0-3 against Denver. Again, caveats, 2 of them were second out of back-to-back. They're up 9 in overtime and Christmas, blah, blah, blah. But it's not that I think they should be favored or will be favored, or really even, like, they'll be significant underdogs in a theoretical series against Oklahoma City. But, like, I think this game shows, like, they would have a fighting chance against that sort of team. And really, like, their ability to beat good teams has never been in question. It's just, like, consistency of performance. And, like, a good example of that was last year in the playoffs. Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals looked like this. And while Game 4 was close, they just didn't have the same, like, defensive effort and intensity and lock-in that they did in the previous game.
Yeah, I think, I've mentioned this in years past, is that the Wolves are a team that do take things personally. I mean, they lost to the Nuggets one year in the playoffs, and the next year they beat them in an epic 7-game comeback series victory. They lost to the Mavericks in the next round, and they come back and they beat the Mavs and Christmas, that Luka Doncic never plays another game for the Mavericks after that. And then you think about, they're the underdogs against the Lakers, and they beat them. Underdogs against the Warriors. Obviously, Steph Curry gets hurt, but they beat them. And so they lose to the Thunder. And so you would think that this year, like, if they get mashed up, I mean, history shows the Wolves will probably show up for that series. They're not going to get, like, demolished, like, 2 years in a row type of thing. And so, yeah, a lot of caveats to everything, but it was a very encouraging win. It was my wife's birthday that day, so it was one of those ones where it was a very calculated move by me, where I was like, you know what, wife? Like, I am not going to watch a Timberwolves game against the defending champs because I value your birthday more. In my head, I was like, I don't want to watch the Wolves lose to the Thunder today. And then so after we have, like, a nice sit-down dinner and we come back again on Pacific time, we get back home and I turn on the game and we're up by double digits in the third quarter. I'm like, whoa, wait, what the hell is going on over here? And so I ended up going back, obviously, and rewatching the entire game. And yeah, just, like, right from the very first tip, like, they were in their jerseys, like, for the better. Like, they were all over them. They obviously were shooting the ball pretty well. I mean, the Wolves shot 47%, 22 of 47. So it was a little bit of a shooting variance in their favorite game. They're not going to shoot, 22 of 47 every night. As you can see today, they struggled until the fourth quarter, obviously. So yeah, it was really pleasing to see that. I think that's, like, again, the idealized version of the Wolves, like, the best version that we can see of them. We got that against the Thunder, so they can't pull that out. Yeah, I think the Nuggets series will be interesting. I'm interested to see them play the Rockets again. That's a game where it's like you feel like that one just kind of got away from the Wolves, but if Ant was available, that would have been a really, really cool game, I think. And so I want to see them play them, because I think, as we're on this, like, collision course with seeding and what teams are left. I mean, we'll get into seedings later, but if the Wolves have to play the Rockets, that's going to be, like, a very possible outcome. And so I think with just one game in the history for this series or this season so far, I like to see what the next 3 look like with them too, or next 2. I forget if they play them 2 or 3 more times this season.
Yeah, and I kind of already mentioned it. Like, a first round series against Houston is totally beatable, and I would probably favor the Wolves to win that series. But it would be a hell of a battle that would go minimum 6 games. And it's just like, it's hard to imagine them coming out of that series and winning. I I think they could win a second series too. It's just like, I don't think any team can win 3 straight playoff series, all of which go 6 or 7 games against this string of teams in the Western Conference. And so to face Houston in the first round when the Wolves minimum should have been like a 3 seed and gotten the Lakers or Suns, like, I think that's going to be what we look back on at the end of the regular season. And kind of, it's been like that a couple of seasons now. Last season they should have been higher than they were. They lost a bunch of games. It didn't end up costing them that year. They would have won an extra game and been the 5 seed. They would have had a much more difficult time getting to the West Finals. They straight up wouldn't have. They would have at best lost in the second round. 2 seasons ago, they were fighting with Denver and Oklahoma City for the 1 seed the entire year, and they came up a win shy of 2 and 2 wins shy of the 1 seed. Less so their fault. Just didn't end up working out that way. And then the first Rudy season 3 years ago, they lost weight. That was the worst of this type of stuff, and they scraped their way into the playoffs. But like, they should have won the Lakers play-in game to get the 7 seed over the 2 seed, and the Lakers made the West Finals that year in that 7 seed. And the Wolves, I think, were too broken as a team that year to go on a similar run. But like, they could have beaten that. Like, the opportunity was there, and so like 2 seasons ago, if they got to face Denver at home, how does that change that? I don't know. So it's more of just it's a bummer that it is trending towards the Wolves kind of ending up a seed or 2 shy of where their talent and their health level says it should have been. All right, let's move into Apex Alpha. Leo, who is your leader of the pack this week?
I gotta give it to Jaden McDaniels. He's been shooting the leather off the ball recently. If you just look at this win streak previous to this game, he was making 3 threes a game at I think upwards of 60% from perimeter, which is pretty wild when you consider it. And he's been shooting the ball well from 3 all year. Again, he's shooting 63% on the last 4 games before today. And I kind of noticed this. I like to share this little anecdote. When I was watching, it was the Wolves at Lakers. I think it was at the second game of the season that the Wolves played in LA. And I was at that game, and I got there early. And I was in there, and I saw Jaden McDaniels working with, I think it was Max, I think is his name. He's one of the assistant coaches. I think he's French or Canadian French. And they were doing some shooting drills from 3. And Jaden was just taking these kind of wild 3-point attempts where he was like, spinning in circles with a guy, and then he's like taking a fadeaway 1-footed 3. And like, we all know, we've seen this. Most of us have all been to NBA games. We've seen shoot around where it's like they're making these crazy shots, or you look at Steph Curry's warm up. But Jaden was hitting these like wild 3s where I'm like, okay, like that's pretty cool, because I know Jaden's kind of like hit or miss from 3. But then like, I think that was foreshadowing of like how much confidence he's had in his 3-point shot recently. And so again, shooting 63% coming into this recent game today against the second game against the Grizzlies. Tonight he went 5 of 7 from 3 again. And it's at that point where it's like he's shooting them. And Ryan, I don't know if, like, how much basketball you play or how much basketball you watch just like kind of at a lower level, but like there's guys where it's like when you feel like they're getting hot or they feel like they're feeling themselves, they'll shoot 3s and they won't hold their follow through, right? It's kind of the Steph Curry, like turn around and look at the bench or whatever, like just kind of just shoot it and just like turn around. A lot of Jaden's shots right now, he's like kind of shooting 3s. He's not holding his follow through because he knows like it's going in. And so I have that feeling when I'm watching him shoot, like, dude, he's really like fucking shooting the shit out of the ball right now. And so, Jaden's been playing really good. He played good tonight as well too. I know he was getting tripped up a little bit on defense earlier, but for the most part, he's been really solid on both sides of the court. I also want to bring up Jaden McDaniels as my Apex Alpha because we'll talk about this in our next section over here in Playtime. But, his name has been popping up in some trade rumors about like, okay, well, what is Jaden McDaniels worth? And so we can get into that later, but I do want to say that, you mentioned it here, and I know Chris Hine mentioned on Blue Sky about how, if a player hears his name come up near trade deadline time, it can be very distracting. It could be a little bit chaotic for them. I'm sure Jaden has probably seen his name come up a little bit, but I've also seen reports that Tim Connolly said that he wouldn't part with Jaden McDaniels. So maybe that's where he's getting his confidence from. But regardless, shout out Jaden McDaniels as an Apex Alpha. I know his wife, Allison, I think is their name. She's also been doing a lot of kind of retweeting of stuff going on, resources for the Minnesota community, despite like a hard time right now. So the McDaniels family really been coming in clutch this week.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk about it, but it makes you it all the how well Jaden is playing makes you really it applies to the Giannis trade in many ways. The other player that maybe also kind of goes in that bucket for me, my epic alpha, Naz Reid. Rough game against the second game against Memphis, but he's just been incredibly shooting the ball, getting to the rim, post ups. Naz is just giving them exactly what they need, and I think to me, what's clear is that like a Julius Randle trade needs to happen at some point, and it's not because it's not even anything Julius's fault necessarily. I just think Naz needs to start. Naz is a starting caliber power forward in this league, and especially with Rudy Gobert like locking down the Wolves center rotation, which I think for the next season or two makes a whole lot of sense. Rudy's been on the whole playing great. Um, Nas next to him has been successful minutes, and it would open up a lane for Berenger to play more as the backup center, which I think we've seen enough that with another year of seasoning on his game, Berenger will be ready for a little bit more of a role next season, and they'd probably try to fill out the bench big unit as well. But I think I think Nas is just ready to be a starter in this league. And again, it's not having anything to do with Julius. It's just like if you trade Julius and replace that with a guard or a wing, I just think the Timberwolves roster makes a whole lot more sense than it does right now. We'll talk about a certain wing in the state to my east here, but yeah, it's an incredible success for the Wolves because they didn't undrafted guy. Um, just think back to like how many, especially like pre-pandemic, the Wolves were just terrible for so many years. How many guys came and went that were like kind of had the beginnings of Nas Reed, right? Where it's like a fan favorite that like, oh, when the Wolves get good, like this player is gonna or whatever, and they come and go, and but like Nas is like just the epitome of that, like of it actually working out. And Nas, the movement threes have been incredible from him lately, like the step backs, the slide to the sides, um, and he's like a little bit similar to Carl, where it's like he's a matchup nightmare. If you put a smaller guy on him, he can get to the rim, and finish with like with a post shot. If you put a bigger guy on him, he's too slow to guard on the perimeter to keep track of Nas either going to the paint or shooting threes. So Nas has just been incredibly valuable for the Wolves.
Yeah, I gotta say, well, before we do Prey of the Week, I do want to give out a shout out to Nas. I mean, you mentioned him shooting the shit out of the ball. I mean, he's in that win streak. He was shooting the most threes per game on the Wolves, 8.8 attempts. He was converting at 45% plus, which is crazy. And I do want to also share that if you weren't following the Wolves during those dark days, I don't blame you. But in 2019, when he went undrafted, got picked up by Gerson Rosas, and he played on the summer league team, that he was one game away from bringing the Wolves their first like any title of any sort. So, well, technically the Iowa Energy won a G League title way back when, before they were connected to the Wolves. But the Timberwolves almost won a summer league season that in 2019 they made it all the way to the finals, and Nas Reed was playing for them, and he was doing really really good. And so again, the Wolves are one game short of it, and Nas Reed was the reason why, because he was playing so well in summer league. So yeah, shout out Nas.
Yep, longest tenure Timberwolf. He's the only pre-pandemic Wolf left on the roster. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the Wolves just don't have any bench scoring when he's not playing well. All right, Prey of the Week. Mine was the free throw line. The Wolves made the free throw line their prey, or at least Ant did. He had 30 free throws in Memphis in these two games. And I thought in a lot of ways, we talk about ethical basketball, unethical basketball. This was enough. A lot of them were fairly unethical, especially in that first game. He was jumping into like it was ugly, and I think it's a good side for Ant that he's able to get to the line like that. I'm more kind of just like some of them are like, why does that have to be a free throw? And certainly other teams do it more than Ant does, and it's not a criticism of Ant at all. It's just like some of the free throw calls that these guys get in this league are annoying, and Ant took advantage of it in Memphis to the tune of 30 free throws in a 2-game span.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been more than enough games this season where it's like, how long has this quarter been going on? Like I look at the clock, it's
Yeah.
like we haven't even started the fourth yet, and so yeah, it is a bit unbearable, and it is what it is. It just sucks that like I think I think who was it, Finch, that said it. I want to say it was after the Thunder series where he's like, now we know what we have to do. Like if this is how the game's gonna be called, like we know what we have to do now. And it's like, no, like don't grift, like we don't have to do it. But I mean, yeah, it's like get with the times or get lost kind of thing. And Ant is obviously like doing his best to draw those fouls and to earn them. But yeah, it is a lot. And again, it just sucks that he has a lot of free throws, and the Wolves as a team are not particularly a good free throw shooting team. It's not just, yes, Rudy Gobert weighs it down, but there's too many times where Julius has missed like 4 free throws a game, or Ant's left 3 or 4 at the line as well too, or even Dante. Like for as good a shooter Dante is, like I looked it up earlier today, he shoots I think 77% from the free throw line, and on the career like just shy of 80%. Where it's like, oh damn, like I thought he was better than that. So that's been a bit annoying for sure.
Yep. All right. Who was your prey of the week?
My prey of the week, zombies. If you ever played Call of Duty, it was really popular. It was Nazi Zombies was a popular game that people played a lot. Well, the
Oh,
Wolves
yeah.
were also shooting some Nazi zombies in the form of teams that were just not, rested, playing their best players for rest or sympathy or whatever it is. The Wolves played 3 games this last week, since last Monday, where teams were resting 5 or more of their rotation guys. So first with the Warriors resting 5 of their main rotation guys, the Dallas Mavericks missing 5 of their rotation guys, and then of course most recently Memphis missing 7 of their rotation guys. So yeah, the Wolves are doing a good job beating up on those teams. I know back in the day we'd be like, these are trap games, but the trap games are the ones where it's like, all right, well, we should win this, and then the momentum is in our favor, and we're in a 4-game winning streak, and then we drop one. So yeah, I mean, shout out to the zombies. Thank you all for participating, but you can go back to your tank now. The Wolves are no longer here.
Exactly. All right. We buried the lead. I don't know on purpose, but we did. Let's talk Giannis. It's been out there for a while now. I thought it was clear when the Wolves played them, like that this thing is just over. Giannis and the Bucks is just over. They lost to the Nuggets twice without Jokic, and I think Murray and Gordon and Brown all missed that. Although both of those ugly stuff. And Giannis requested a trade, but didn't request a trade. Whatever. It's the first time that the Bucks seem to be very actively shopping Giannis. We'll see if they get it done by the deadline. But I wanted to talk to you. I know I talked about it by myself about trading for Giannis from the Wolves' perspective. I think most people. Well, there's two kind of schools of thought. One from just a pure fan perspective. I get people that'd be hesitant to trade one or both of Jaden McDaniels or Naz Reid. Just because like those are your favorite players. Those guys are fun to watch. Like maybe that type of person would be like understand like, yes, Giannis would make the team better, but like I just want to watch my guys, so I don't want this trade to happen. That's totally fair. I get that. I certainly felt that way after the Cat trade. A trade that in retrospect has absolutely worked out for the Timberwolves, but having Cat around was just like something I enjoyed, right? But like almost setting that aside, I think it's if the trade is just going to be Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle for Giannis, and maybe throwing Rob Dillingham and maybe Baron J. If that's the trade, I think it's just like if the Wolves can get that done, I just think it's an absolute no brainer. And if you're able to keep Naz Reid out of the deal, it's just a no brainer. Maybe to do that you have to send out Rudy to a third team, or Jaden's probably going to all of that. If you're able to keep Naz, I think it's a no-brainer. The question for me is if it is Naz plus Jaden plus Julius, and again, Rob Dillingham, I think in that scenario, you'd almost have to be keeping Baron J. And almost in any scenario, maybe you're keeping Baron J because your internal stock of him is much higher than the Bucks or whoever else would be getting him. I would be my guess. So maybe Baron J just in every scenario is staying here. I think like setting up both Naz and Jaden, I think is where like things start to like you start to think about the repercussions, the potential downside, because trading for Giannis has gigantic upside. Obviously, if you trade for Giannis, you are going to be title favorites in the near future, if not already. Like just Ant and Giannis plus a half baked roster is going to be an amazing team. And I've seen people say like, dude, look at these. There's a lot of teams that have this type of roster, 2 stars at the top and not much behind them. And it just hasn't been working out in this era of the NBA. And I would push back against that. No, 2 top 6 players in the NBA have not been on the same team in a long time. The last time was Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And guess what? They won the title. Before that, Steph and KD won 2 titles. Like, there's been 2 stars and not much else, but not like this. Not like what Ant and Giannis would be. The other thing is that I don't think the Wolves. I think training for Giannis this season would be extremely tough for the Wolves. They just don't have the depth. So like this season, it might cause a lot of issues this season. But like I don't think they'd be strapped. Like they could, if Rudy's still on the roster, they could trade Rudy for 2 rotation players, 2 starting caliber players, right? Like I think there'd be a way to fill out the roster behind them. The only thing, last couple thoughts, before I give it to you, I kind of looking at the deals that are available now, I almost kind of feel like they shouldn't have to include both Jaden and Nas. Like Jaden McDaniels, like should receive on the open market, if you're just trading him to all 30 teams, like 3 first-round picks. I kind of believe that. Maybe the market is like Desmond Bane. Is Desmond Bane better than Jaden McDaniels? Some ways yes, some ways no. But like trade value wise, I think Jaden has like close to that level of trade value. And so if you're also trading Julius, which should, I think on his current contract is a plus and should get you a first or 2 if you're shopping, like I think that's a lot of value. And if you're adding in Rob and you're adding in, I think that outbids a lot of the other offers. So maybe you don't have to include Nas. Maybe can you get away with including Gobert? Again, you're getting picks back and you're rebounding them to Memphis. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. But if you're going to make the trade, there's like 4 things you have to be sure of. 1, Giannis wants to be here. I think we kind of already know that's a yes, but like you need to know it. 2, that he will sign in this offseason the big extension. I think that would also, we can assume, would be a yes. 3, Ant wants to play with Giannis. I think that would probably be a yes, but maybe Giannis' playstyle wouldn't work with Ant. 4, and this is the big one. If you're trading one or both, especially both of Jaden and Nas, is Ant cool with that? Or maybe better yet, can Ant get over it if he does have a problem with it? And that's the one that's like, you can't really find out. You can give your best educated guess of as the front office member, but you're not going to be able to know for sure. My thought of like, they're professionals. They'll get over, it's the wrong word, but like they know it's a business. Maybe the worry there is like, I don't know if like the idea that this is a business, I'm not sure that has really sunk in with Ant to like the full degree that it eventually will. And so you're accelerating that clock. And so you're accelerating like the Anthony Edwards eventually wants to leave clock, which I think right now is nowhere near. I think he's completely happy in Minnesota. But the downside is like this accelerates that clock. And for me, I think I'm willing to do that because you see these guys request trades all the time. And the talent that Giannis is too much for me to pass up. But the risks are there and are almost as big as the reward would be too. So if people are hesitant to take that risk and just want to watch, like this current version of the Wolves would be good for as long as Ant's on the roster. And this could, in the worst case scenario, accelerate the end of that, but it also could lead to the greatest possible thing. So that's a long-winded soliloquy by me. Leo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts too, and I think the first thing that you kind of said that I want to talk on is trading Jaden McDaniels and Nas Reid is not preferable. Like, I agree with that, and I think that's totally reasonable, and I'm with you. Like, I get it. Like, these are, like you said, these are our guys. Minnesota sports fans are loyal to their guys and their own homegrown stars. So I'm with you on that. It's one of those things where it's like I think about like, yeah, would I have rather made 10 NBA finals with Carl Anthony Towns on the team and lost all 10 of them, or won 1 NBA finals where Miles Bridges is like the star of the team? It's like, no, I'd rather take the first like fate. Like, I know, yeah, we all want to win a championship, but like, no, like that, there's a certain line. We all have different like lines and moral values that we want to kind of, draw it at. Like, oh, I'm not going to support the team about this. So there's that. Now, Brandon Beck of, 2 words, no pants. I'm just kidding. Crutch wears no pants. He said it best, I think, when he said that it was up to me. I would like to trade for Giannis with giving up very little, if anything, for him. So like, I think that's ideal. But at the end of the day, it takes something to get something. And Giannis, for given his age, I understand the injury concerns. He's a very physical player. It's predicated on this athleticism, and he has had some soft tissue injuries more and more recently. So I understand that risk of it. And again, I think that the window with Nas and Jaden as like the main core moving forward, I like those chances, like in the next like 4 to 5 years, whatever that is. I'm not saying they will win a championship. I think they definitely have a couple shots at it. But then I think I also like the chances of winning a championship in the next 1 to 2 years with Giannis and the Ant a little bit better in terms of championship wise. And also for me, I think what kind of brings a little bit over is that I'm definitely a classic like guy where I care about the player, like who they are as a player, as a human being more than they are as a player. And Giannis is a great human being. A lot of people know about his story or read his autobiography or his biography, which I have. He's always a guy who's very vocal about the community during the murder of James Blake, and they held out for a game there. And Giannis has always never been shy to talk about that stuff, and so he's a guy I would love to root on the Wolves. Now, if we're looking strictly on the basketball side, I am team trade the farm for Giannis. All right, package Rob Dillingham, package Johan Berenger, package Joe Ingles, whoever you got to do to get there. Joe Ingles returned to Milwaukee. Does that interest them? Whereas like, you know what? Maybe you even got to part with Johnny Juzang. Okay. But whatever you got to do to get Giannis, I would say do it. And I say this even just on the basketball side of it. I think a lot of people think like, oh, well, is Giannis a bad fit for Ant? Is he going to clog up the spacing? Is it going to be like tough for Ant to get in the lane? I like to think of it in the backwards way. Is Ant a good pairing for Giannis? And I would say absolutely yes. You have a two-way wing player who is a Steph Curry level three-point shooter that can space the floor with Giannis, who's dominating the inside and is also a two-way force as well too. Now, I just love that fit. I mean, put in the 10 best G League guys you can sign around them that could spread the floor. They'll make it work, and I do like those chances. I do think that yes, if we do make a trade, which I think is unrealistic by the trade deadline for Giannis, I do think that you are kind of tanking this year in terms of trying to win a championship. At least, not only is Giannis hurt, but it's going to take a lot of time to readjust. Kind of get all together. I don't think that they're winning a championship this year. But I would say next year with Tim Connelly at the helm, I do believe in the fact that they can put together a team that should be able to compete for a championship. Because I just think about how much Giannis can punish a team like, the OKC Thunder or whatever the case may be. Obviously, there's a lot of other pieces. So basketball wise, I really like that fit. Human wise, I like that fit. I do agree with your concerns about, okay, well, what does that mean for Ant's long-term future? Because again, I think once Giannis comes over here, say if he's healthy by, mid 2026, I do think he is going to be the best player on the team. Now that may change after the next 2 to 3 years after that. And Ant is the future. So I'm not saying we just give up on Ant, but I do think that Ant is the type of dude where like, yeah, he's young and, he has his best friends and whatnot, but he was close with Cat. And he was close with, even before that for the Rudy Gobert trade, he was close with Jared Vanderbilt. He had said that Vando would be one of the guys he would love to have back on his team when he was once asked, like, is there a player that, you once played with that, you really wish you could have back? He said Jared Vanderbilt. And so it's happened. And I think he is a guy where he's kind of like, look, man, at the end of the day, I'm just here to play basketball and I want to play basketball for better or worse. And I think that if Giannis comes, he's like, all right, I'm here to play basketball with Giannis type of thing. And so it's extremely risky. So I'm not saying that, I think there's no potential disaster scenario around trading the farm for Giannis. But I do think that one, it's unrealistic that it happens, that the Bucks are even interested. And also it could be unrealistic that Tim Connelly is willing to do that as well too. I trust him. I think Ryan and I bring this up today because, there were more reports leaking around that the Bucks and Timberwolves had some intriguing trade discussions dating back to last summer. I think Mark Stein mentioned that they've been connected to the Bucks over the summer of 2025, and that even at some point there may have been a deal that the Wolves had tried to make for Giannis that the Bucks were quick to kind of turn down, whatever that was. And so there is more smoke right now from Brian Windhorst saying that Minnesota is one of the most aggressive teams from the Western Conference right now for Giannis. So yeah, I think we're going to hear this until probably our next episode where we're like, remember that time when the Wolves were going to, try and trade for Giannis, just like we're going to say, remember that time when the Wolves tried to trade for Kevin Durant? Remember that time the Wolves were going to add Kyrie Irving to join Jimmy Butler on the Timberwolves? There's going to be things of the past, but in the meantime, we're talking about it. Speaking of, news, Ryan, as Ryan and I are recording this right now, I also think of the alternatives. There's a trade request apparently by James Harden from the Clippers mid-game when they're getting sandblasted by the 76ers. And I only bring that up because I think of the disaster scenarios of, you go back a month or so, the Wolves are somewhat connected somehow on John Morant, connected somehow to Trae Young, and now James Harden is on, out there where it's like, I would much rather maybe pay extra to get a Giannis than to end up with the alternative, which is like, oh, okay, we pay a medium amount for one of those more problematic players. So those are my Giannis thoughts. I think it'll change. You ask me next week, I'm going to say something completely different, but as of right now, that's where I stand.
Yeah, it's good thoughts. The James Harden stuff is interesting, and like to get out in front of it. No, the Wolves cannot really trade for James Harden. He makes too much money. They would have to send out basically the same Giannis trade package to get him. So it might be helpful for the Wolves, but the money is not there. Thinking about the Giannis trade a little bit more, the one thing I think, the Dillingham trade is really hurting them right now.
Yeah.
If they had the pick in the swap that went out with Dillingham, I think this trade would be a whole lot easier to make. You'd have a solid pick to send out there, as well as an extra swap. You don't need Dillingham's salary to make it work. So like, whenever I get frustrated by the Dillingham trade, it's because of stuff like this. Like that's why the pick is important. I don't care about what 7th grader they traded away. It's about the opportunity cost of not being able to do it. The second thing is the Wolves would have more to offer in the offseason. That is true. They'll have a pick unlocked that they could trade, and that trade a 2033 first round pick would have a lot of value to Minnesota or to Milwaukee. What I will add is like, that's true for basically every other team. The Lakers, the Warriors, all these teams the Heat would all have more to offer. And two, my worry and what I think would happen is that one or two of OKC, San Antonio, and Houston are going to lose in the playoffs and go, we are not good enough. We need to make a big trade. And those three teams, especially Oklahoma City and San Antonio, they have the young players to outbid the Wolves, and they certainly have the picks to outbid the Wolves. And so to me, I totally get like the hesitancy. It seems like it's a at best coin flip that the Bucks are going to trade him before the deadline, and then from there it's like at best a 1 in 5 shot that the Wolves get it done, right? But to me, I think if the Wolves are going to get Giannis, it's going to be now. I think by the offseason, more teams are going to join the party, and the Wolves are just going to get outbid. Which is why I would kind of, in the same feeling, feel like Milwaukee's going to wait. To me, the only way Giannis ends up a Wolf is if he goes to Milwaukee and goes, "You're trading me now, and I only want to go to the Wolves, or I only want to go to the Knicks and the Wolves." And Giannis would have to basically pressure them and be like, and that's going to be the case in the offseason, and you're not going to get more from me then. So do it now. And Giannis would be incentivized to do that because if he gets traded at the deadline, he's eligible for the super duper whatever max extension, right, where if he gets traded in the offseason, the new team would only be able to give him a regular extension or regular max extension. And I didn't do the math, but it would cost him tens of millions of dollars. The problem is it just doesn't seem like Giannis is willing to make it get any sort of ugly. He hasn't even said the word trade demand while clearly asking to be, I don't know. So to me, the only way Giannis ends up a Wolf is he specifically basically requests it, which is possible, but I think we both feel it's unlikely. And it's kind of also at the point where I'm almost done talking about it, if that makes sense. Like it's either going to happen or it's not. What I think will happen is a trade of some sort. Assuming Giannis doesn't happen, they'll trade for a backup guard or wing, to fill out the rest of the bench. It'll either be Rob or Mike and Rob or Mike, Rob and Lenny or something like that. Some small trade that gives the team the best shot. But I think to close it out, the reason I'm kind of really willing to trade Giannis is I think the current core of this team, this current top six, I'm not going to say isn't good enough. I don't think has the right set of pieces, the right cohesion to win the title. And I think a big trade has to happen. It doesn't have to be for a player of Giannis's caliber, but like I mentioned, I think a Julius Randle for a different All-Star caliber player is a deal that will eventually need to happen. And why it makes it more intriguing for me is that if you can make that move and it's for Giannis, obviously you're giving up more than if you're trading for a different level player. But like that's why it's interesting to me. Well,
what
fully
about
acknowledging the risk.
what about trading Julius Randle for Karl Anthony Towns?
The problem is that they'd need to include more money in that. So they'd have to include a player like Dante DiVincenzo to make it work.
That's too much. Yeah,
And
that's too much for me.
now we are now we're hitting the undo button on that one.
We're back in time. We're pulling the Sacramento Kings. Yeah.
The Knicks are in a similar boat as the Wolves, and I kind of think the reason why I would favor the Knicks to get Giannis over the Wolves is I think they're just more desperate to make a trade like this. Because I think both teams have a similar level of trade packages, but the big difference is Julius, while maybe a slightly less of a valuable player than Cat, is on a much better deal.
Yeah.
And Cat's contract is negative
Right.
value. I don't think you could get off of Karl at positive value, or certainly you could dump him, but you'd get expirings back and that's it. So I think the Knicks would have to trade both Bridges and Anunoby to get it done. And at that point, I mean, similar to the Wolves, but like, where are they going with Brunson but they Cat next to Giannis would be super fun. But I do think like the Knicks would just be more desperate, where the Wolves I think have more of a reason to be hesitant. And maybe, I mean, I talked about Giannis, but like if the Wolves are going to get it without some sort of pressure, like any sort of hesitancy, I think is going to cost you.
Well, Ryan, there's always the off chance that Tim Connolly and John Horst get a couple beers, get a little drunk, and pull a little Nico Harrison, and they trade. He talks John Horst into trading Giannis for, you know what? How about Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle? How does that sound for you? It's like, you know what? I don't want to start a whole bidding war. I'm going to get ahead of this and just make that deal. So who knows, right? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen, obviously. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a lot more of this talk that you'll see on your social media feeds in the next couple of days until it's over. Hopefully, if he does get traded to the Wolves, if not, then hopefully to the Eastern Conference team. So we shall see.
Yep. Tim Connolly's got to drive down to Milwaukee, get some Spotted Cow into the GM. That's a local beer out in Wisconsin. So, with that said, that's going to be the last time this podcast talks about the Giannis trade before the deadline.
We'll do emergency pod if it happens.
Well, that for sure. But like, barring that, right. I've talked about it plenty. Let's close this out with our 2 words. Mine are long days. Kind of 2 meanings here is just these couple days before the deadline are going to feel long. You're going to be on your phone a bit too much. Lord knows we do that already enough, but, and then just like the dog days of the season. It doesn't excuse anything, but like in terms of projecting forward, the results of the games of the week leading up to the All-Star break are not necessarily the most instructive, but also they count the same. So, loss like tonight, like we already talked about, is costly. Leo, your 2 words.
Yeah, my 2 words are don't fear. That is not foreshadowing for Fear the Deer. Or is it not fearing the terrifying inconsistency of this team? I think it's a little bit everything. Ryan and I talked about it at the top earlier in this episode. Like, it's easy to overreact to a bad loss against the Grizzlies or whatever the case is, or overreact to we beat the Thunder who were missing players, we're going to win the championship. So try not to fear and believe in this team. They've shown us who they are in the past 2 seasons. And, with the good comes the bad. And we just kind of got to get through that as well. The Wolves do play 5 games, I think, before the All-Star break. So they will have plenty of chances to either make this taste even worse in their mouth or get this taste out of their mouth the next week here or so. They do have a back-to-back upcoming as well over the weekend. I think Sunday and Monday, I believe they play the Clippers. And then they play let me double check here, the Hawks. So 2 tough games upcoming for them. But in the meantime, they have the Raptors in Toronto and they have the Pelicans at home. And then they finish off with the Blazers for the All-Star break. So don't fear. There's plenty of games still up to come. And then we all get to take a collective break over the All-Star break and think about how great Giannis and Ant's going to be next year. So,
yeah, it's going to be a crazy week and a half, I think, with the trade deadline and then the schedule leading up to the break. And it'll be a needed break for everyone. I think podcasters and roster alike, but I'll be back after the deadline, probably Friday. If they do trade for Giannis, we'll put something together. But if it's just a simple deadline, Friday afternoon, get something up. Then Leo will be back, and Leo and I will be back for a week from now, and then only one pod next week with the All-Star break. Kind of enjoy the time off with the team. But for Leo, I'm Ryan. Thank you everyone for listening.
Get home and drive safe.
Go Wolves.
Are you?